What was a house rule you had as a kid that you thought was completely normal until you grew up and realized not all households followed? My door could only be closed if I was changing clothes. If my parents suspected that I was hiding anything, they could, and did, go through anything to make sure. Dresser and desk drawers. Bags. Closet. Whatever they felt was necessary. Even my mail was fair game. As a result, I got really good at hiding things. Haiku night dinners. Some nights we spoke in haiku. And only haiku. I had super laid back parents, but there were a few certain things that they were randomly crazy strict about. No gum. No Play-Doh. No cereal with sugar as one of the top 3 ingredients. No Simpsons. I had basically no rules growing up. But those 4 things would make them lose their goddamn minds. I still get anxious when I'm chewing gum and I'm 35. I come from a large family. Anytime we'd order pizza, we ordered a few different kinds because, obviously, there were different preferences. Any leftovers were left in their respective boxes and placed in the oven. I did that when I lived with a couple of roommates, and of course their reaction was, "I just burned this box. Why was it in the oven?" I had to answer the phone. "Hello, this is first name last name speaking." Whenever I answered the phone, this is OBV in the 80s before caller ID on landlines. My mom tried to make my childhood friends do it too when they called me to play. As in, "Hi, can I talk to Jill Chulpan? Who is this?" "It's friend." "Well, friend, when you call this house and I answer the phone, you should say hello to me and then tell me that it's you. Your first name and last name. Before you ask to talk to Jill Chulpan." Boy, was I popular. If I got hurt doing a certain activity, I wasn't allowed to do that activity again. My mother ended that rule though when I broke my wrist snowboarding when I was 16 and didn't tell her until a month later when I couldn't move my wrist at all and it required surgery with a bone graft to repair. If you ever ran out of toilet paper whilst on the toilet, you had to sing the Stranded song or else no one else in the house would bring you a roll. Not mine, but my mother-in-law and her sister will fuss at you if you wash your hands in the kitchen sink. I think that's weird. It has a sink and some hand soap. I say wash away. My wife isn't like that. We weren't allowed to eat anything without first asking. Even a glass of water. We were required to ask first. When my boyfriend and I started dating, I would ask his parents if I could eat or drink something if I was hungry or thirsty, and it was a hard habit to break when his mom told me I could literally eat or drink anything other than the alcohol. It was so weird to just go into the fridge or pantry without permission. I sometimes have to fight the urge to ask my BF if I can eat our food in our apartment. When I went to my parents' house over Christmas, I was reprimanded for getting an apple without asking first. It's just all so weird, but it used to be so normal. My dad used to set up mine and my sister's Easter egg hunts in such a way we followed written clues from place to place. As a way to help us learn to read. Until I was a young adult, I assumed that was how all kids did Easter egg hunts. Wakey time. No noise annoying mum and dad until 7 AM. This was a really necessary one. BC I was a very early riser as a kid and I loved to talk to my parents. The rule was that I could come to their bed and curl up next to them. But I couldn't talk until 7. It was actually really nice. Made sure I got enough rest myself. Tragically, once I started rowing like 7 years later, mum and dad had to get up at 4 anyway to get me to the sheds. Sorry guys. I wasn't allowed to take a shower if I was home alone. I also learned at age 7 that other households closed the bathroom door when using the toilet and keeping it open was weird. I learned that by keeping the door open at a friend's house. A friend walked by the bathroom, saw me, told their mom. Their mom called my mom. And all of a sudden the new house rule was we close the bathroom door when using the toilet. My parents would check my and my brother's teeth for sugar bugs every night after we brushed our teeth. Before we got in bed. If they thought we were trying to skip brushing our teeth, they would tell us they could see the sugar bugs in our teeth and would make us go brush again. My brother and I were so convinced these sugar bugs were real we would constantly ask when we'd be able to see them. My parents always told us only people 13 and older could see them. But by the time we got to be 13 we had completely forgotten about the sugar bugs in our teeth. I love thinking about creative parenting tactics like this. I've even used that one while babysitting a fussy kid who doesn't want to brush their teeth get ready for bed, and it helps a lot. My mum used to pay me to be my own babysitter between the ages of 10-14 or so. The rule was that as long as I didn't make a mess and I'd put myself to bed by the time she got home, then I got $10 in the morning. My mom freaks out about hearing commercials on TV. The second it goes to commercial break it has to be muted. She also mutes it if she thinks it's about to go to commercial. Even though sometimes she's wrong. And she doesn't really pay attention. So she doesn't notice a lot of the time when the commercials are over, so she leaves it on mute when the show is back on. It's very difficult to watch TV with her. I had to wash the dishes every night. Even if I wasn't home for the meal. There were times I'd get home from an away basketball game. I was on the team after 10 PM and the dishes had sat since they finished eating around 6:30 PM. My older brother's nightly chore? Take out the garbage. He'd be done in 2 minutes. I'd have 30+ minutes of washing, drying, putting away, and cleaning up the kitchen. Maybe it's not a house rule, but when I was 6 my mom told me that if I behaved she would let me skip school on Saturdays and Sundays. One day my teacher said see ya Monday and I knew. Not a rule. Still to this day I am befuddled at my mother's reasoning. When I was a boy we lived in a pretty rural part of Mexico. Horrible infrastructure. Power would often go out in the middle of the night. She would proceed to wake my brother and I up. Simply to wait until the power came back on. For the life of me I cannot figure that out. She wasn't afraid of the dark. She just wanted to make sure we saw the power return. Everyone keeps suggesting because of fire reasons, and come to think of it, that actually makes a lot of sense. It's actually how we lost that house. Maybe my mother is clairvoyant. If I told my parents I was leaving at a certain time, I had to leave at that time. Let's say I told my parents I would leave a party at 9. I couldn't leave at 8:50. Or I'd get yelled at grounded. I couldn't leave at 9:10. Or I would get yelled grounded. Same thing went for when I was leaving my house to go somewhere. My dad made a rule that I had to kill 7 flies a day during my summer break. My family had a thing we called the food blanket. When we'd eat casual meals, we'd lay a blanket on the living room floor and eat on it. Like a picnic. My parents didn't want to get any food on the carpet. Instead of set the table, my mom would say, "Go lay out the blanket." I remember being really confused when I learned every family didn't have a food blanket. When I got in trouble I was put on reading restriction as a punishment. I loved to read as a kid, still do, so it was an effective punishment at the time. My parents used a laissez-faire parenting style. No censorship whatsoever. I watched Rocky Horror Picture Show with my brother when I was 7. Pretty awkward when I brought the VHS with me to a sleepover at a friend's house. The parents were mortified. We weren't allowed to walk in our dining room unless we were using the room for a special occasion. The carpet always had that just vacuumed look, so it was a dead giveaway if anyone walked across it. Wasn't in my home, but my aunt and uncle never let us use the upstairs washroom when we were kids because they thought we'd touch the walls with our dirty hands, so they made us in a jar they kept under the kitchen sink and just poured it down the drain when we were done. Never thought it was strange until I brought it up to my cousin a few years ago. We laughed pretty hard about it. Tape half the house off in winter. I couldn't add the jokes in Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer song. My dad thought it was disrespectful. It's not really a house rule, it's just a really odd one. Also, when a parent says your name you have to reply coming, not yeah, because they'll ignore it. First thing upon coming in the house you have to change into clean pants and wash your hands. Guests were exempt from the pants rule but not hand washing. If you took your shoes off while you were out you had to change your socks as well. Was literally told by my best friend's dad I was only allowed to eat popcorn one kernel at a time. When I was sick I couldn't be in my bed because it would make it dirty. My mom put a towel in a corner on the hardwood floor and I had to stay there until she Ed me better enough to use my bed. My father never let us talk around the dinner table. Once when I was 15 I asked everyone around the table how they were doing and how their day was. My dad got up angrily after hurriedly finishing his meal and said, "I can't stand people talking around a meal. If I wanted to talk to you I would." We finished our meal in silence. My dad used to give me all the change in his pocket to leave him and my mom alone so they could shut their bedroom door and talk. It wasn't till many years later that I realized I was basically pimping out my mom. I wasn't allowed in my parents' room at all. Not even to use their shower if the hall bath was occupied and we were going to be late. No swearing, which includes the obvious as well as stupid, idiot, shut up and fart. If you don't get A's you don't eat at the table. I legit thought this was normal until I had dinner at a friend's house and my friend brought home a devastating report card. His parents were so supportive and loving. Edit. I'm not Asian, you guys. Bare skin was not allowed to touch the leather sofa. No shorts. Bare feet. Tank tops. Etc. Also we had to peel mushrooms. It took forever and was completely stupid. We had to have milk after dinner. Before bed. Asked my mom when I was older what that was about and she realized we could have just had milk with dinner if we wanted. But she had been raised kosher so it wasn't something she thought about. No television before 5 or after 8. And dinner is at 6. The room in my house that was used for extra storage was always called the sewing room. I've never seen so much as a sewing machine in there. Edit. Thanks, stranger. I wasn't allowed to play in the living room as a child. If I played too loud in my room I was also whooped. My dad's golden rule was children are meant to be seen, not heard. As a result, I allow my children to play anywhere in the house. As loudly as they want. As long as they clean it up. Just the other day my son held a rock concert in the living room with his new toy guitar and amplifier. The music was terrible. But his smile made it worth it. Not so much a rule as a tradition. Dad got home from work. He would immediately change into PJs. And that was our time to do the same if desired. Watching TV shows where someone would drop in by surprise. And the parents would just welcome them in. Seemed like some Hollywood BS to me. Like the mother who never left the kitchen. We weren't allowed to watch anything remotely sexual, like if people were kissing on screen my mom would freak out and run to cover the TV with a pillow and go blah blah cough loudly until it was over. Once I tried to see a PG-13 movie with my friends and my mom cried and my dad called me horrible for making her cry. I was 14. We had to clean up the dishes as soon as everyone was finished eating, which included washing, rinsing, drying and putting away all dishes by hand and wiping down all surfaces and sweeping the floor and cleaning the kitchen sinks. It didn't matter if your favorite show was coming on. The dishes were never allowed to wait even for a minute. Also, no elbows on the table. I sat right next to my stepdad at the dinner table and if I put my elbow on the table he would stab me in the arm with his fork. Used to me off so badly. We also had assigned places at the dinner table. Weren't allowed anywhere but bedroom or bathroom after bedtime. I had a friend sleep over one night and in the middle of the night she told me she was thirsty and was going to the kitchen to get a glass of water. I freaked out. No going places on my own. It's not a rule but I get in trouble for going places and I'm never given permission to go anywhere. Turns out all my friends can be just about anywhere and I'm stuck saying can't man. My mom said no. No sliced bread in the house. Like my parents were perfectly normal in every other sense. But I think my mom assumed the uncut bakery bread at the grocery store was better quality or healthier or something. Anyway, I remember going to a friend's house at like 13 years old and making a sandwich with pre-sliced bread. It was awesome. So much easier. My friend and her family laughed at my revelation but I'm not kidding, it was a game changer. I'd been cutting my own slices for years and they were always slightly uneven and it made making sandwiches or having a piece of bread a bit of a pain. I went home and immediately demanded sliced bread. It took a bit of convincing but eventually my mom caved to my demands. To this day my parents still prefer unsliced bread, but whenever I visit my mom will go to the store and buy a sliced loaf just for me. I was not allowed to clear my plate when eating. I had to always leave some food on the plate. If I wanted to eat that much, I had to go get a little more to leave on the plate. The exact opposite of what most people have as a household rule. Edit. For those confused, I clarify in comments below. I super enjoyed all the new cultural knowledge. I'm going to bed. : My sister and I had to read for 30 minutes after school. My parents weren't even home, but we would tattle on each other. Another rule was, I couldn't tell anyone when a certain uncle was staying with us because he was dodging an arrest warrant. Edit. This is my most popular post. To clear a few things up. My uncle isn't a pedophile or a violent offender. He's an addict and a thief. Also, his sister and I weren't taught to snitch on each other. We were just enemies. Looking back, we could have gotten away with a lot if we'd teamed up. Edit 2. My first coins. Thank you kind stranger. Edit 3. And silver. Thank you. Was the oracle. I grew up with 6 siblings. In the TV room, there were more people than couch seats. We had a rule that you couldn't steal someone's seat if they got up to go to the bathroom, get a drink, etc. My parents instituted it because of all the fights that would happen over seats. We all instantly realized how great a rule it was. No more arguments. But more importantly, your seat was safe for the night. I never thought it was a normal rule as defined by the OP. But it is a great rule that every family should have. Vegetables. A little or a lot, that was my mom's response when I didn't want to eat them. If I talked back I'd get quiet days where the rest of the day I wasn't allowed to talk to my parents. At all. If I did, I lost privileges like my phone or I'd get grounded. Kinda weird looking back. We had a no room. A room where we simply just couldn't go in because it was full of antiques. Also, my black friend wasn't able to come over. I didn't know why, so I had her over anyways and we walked to my house after school. Didn't realize the Black History memorabilia my dad had hanging around the house was actually racist. We had a black maid when I was little, so I never realized anything was wrong with it. It was promptly moved to the attic instead of having a display corner. But my dad still didn't want her over. No use in rubbing in her face a house she'll never have. I just realized that my dad was an asshole after that. Our bedtime in high school was 9:00 p.m. We weren't allowed to eat any food past 7:00 p.m. If my sister or I made a mess in our bedroom, my mom would toss everything, including stuff that was already in its right space, into a pile in the middle of the room to make us clean an even bigger mess. I love her dearly, but that woman and cleaning. When you have friends around the door, you're not to feed them, give them drinks, or let them in to use the bathroom for any reason at all. My dad always tells me not to lock any doors in the house, including my room door and the bathroom door.